Welcome to Municipal Affairs. My name is Christopher Brown, and this is Canada Votes 2025, the debates. Week 4 of the federal election is behind us, and with it, the advance polls are now officially open. The race is tightening, and for voters across the country, decisions are starting to take shape. But before ballots are cast, there was a crucial moment this week: the leaders' debate. Over 2 nights, the leaders of 4 parties took center stage. Liberal leader Mark Carney, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. They fielded tough questions in both English and French, trying to cut through the noise and connect with Canadians from coast to coast to coast. But the question we ask here today is this: did the debate matter to municipal leaders? Did they hear anything at all that gives municipalities across the country a clearer picture of how a future federal government plans to partner with local leaders to tackle the housing crisis, strengthen public transit, support community safety, or invest in energy transformation? Or did the most important level of government, the government of proximity, the one closest to the people, everyday's lives, get lost in the shuffle? Now, to break this all down, we are joined by a powerhouse panel from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Sturgeon County Councillor Neil Como, who also chairs FCM's Rural Forum, Val-Morin Mayor Donna Salvalti, and Brampton Councillor Rowena Santos. We'll unpack what was said, what wasn't, and what it all means for municipalities coast to coast to coast. Now, this is a conversation you will not want to miss. So with that, let's get into the conversation. Across Canada, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities are alive with stories waiting to be told. Stories of innovation and economic development, resilience in the face of the housing challenges, and the financial hurdles municipalities overcome every day. At the Cross Border Network, we bring these stories to life. From coast to coast to coast, we're connecting Canadians to the issues shaping our communities and showcasing the people working tirelessly to make them thrive. With your support, we can expand our reach, amplify more voices, and shine a light on the challenges and triumphs of municipal life. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can help us grow and continue sharing the stories that matter most. Join us today and be part of this important mission. Together, we can tell more stories, build stronger communities, and make a real difference. Support the Cross Border Network now. Visit www.crossborderinterviews.ca today. Councillors, Mayor, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about week 4 in the federal election, but also the 2 leaders debate, which is the things that you are here to talk about today. Before we get into some of the line of questions, I just want to go around the table and get everyone to introduce themselves. So those who have never met you or have seen you on my show can get a refresher of who you are. So starting with the people who joined the roundtable first, Mayor, can you just quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Donna Salvati, Mayor of Val-Morin, a community 75 kilometers north of Montreal. And I'm happy to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Councillor Santos, yourself?
Hi, everyone. Councillor Rowena Santos from the city of Brampton, a regional councillor that is right next to Toronto and now the second largest city in the GTHA.
Ooh, the last time we talked, you think you were on the cusp there. So things have changed. Second largest, that's great. And Councillor Como, yourself.
Neil Como, Sturgeon County. I'm also the chair of Rural Forum with FCM, so that's my connection back there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the quick introductions. So I want to start with a general question, get all 3 of you to answer this if possible. This is not a question I prepared you for. This is an off-the-top question. We are now, by the time this airs, a week away from Election Day. From your individual perspectives, from Quebec, from Ontario, from Alberta, how has this campaign addressed the municipal issues in your local jurisdiction? So we'll start with Councillor Santos on this one first.
Yeah, so I think and what was striking to me, and we're going to talk about the debate as well, but even throughout the entire election, a lot of focus has obviously been on Trump and the tariffs in the US-Canada relations, which fair enough. That's an important top of mind issue for Canadians. But in terms of being an FCM board member myself and then chair of the Finance, Infrastructure, Transportation Committee at FCM, and representing the city of Brampton, I have not heard too much about how each leader, each party is going to do more to partner, to collaborate, to work with municipalities who are really the ones who are delivering on some of these major issues, whether it's housing or infrastructure projects, dealing with homelessness. So a lot of these concerns that residents have throughout the entire country are things that municipalities are expected to deliver. So I'm a little bit surprised that no leader has yet explained how they're going to work better with municipalities and support local economies.
Councillor Como, same question to yourself. What have you heard during this course of this campaign to give you hope that the leaders are talking or wanting to address local issues as well as those federal, global issues?
Yeah, I think Rowena is correct. Everything is pivoted to the tariffs, and that's the talk that we're encountering. I think our local members that I've met here, the people that are running here in Sturgeon County, but in Alberta, they understand the focus and the needs of the municipalities. They understand that we're, boots on the ground. We're the closest to the people, government proximity that they need to still work with. I think post-election, that's where we'll really see them, come and sit at the table, as they always have in the past. Each party has been represented at the past at all of our FCM meetings. I'm looking forward to whoever forms cabinet, really having a firsthand meeting, whether it be in all likelihood, we know it's going to be either Carney or Poilievre. So to have firsthand meetings with both of them will be a great thing for FCM, and to further establish those relationships. And as Rowena mentioned, really we need to focus on, I'm going to go with infrastructure. We all have failing infrastructure in our communities, and that is something that really needs to be addressed. So that's the main thing. And I think she's correct. We haven't really heard that yet. It's been more of a rhetoric run, unfortunately, right now, it seems like. But the tariffs are a real important factor. And as you know, I've been down in the States a couple times representing FCM to talk about that with municipal leaders down there, and everyone understands it. But we need to be able to have whoever's going to be in play, leading the helm of the ship, has to be able to go down to the States and form a better relationship than what is currently there.
And Mayor Salvati, from your perspective as the mayor of your community, have you heard anything from any of the party leaders? And I say nationally and also provincially, because the Bloc Québécois was on the stage in both leaders' debate, that gives you hope that the parties are taking municipal issues seriously.
I find that there's focusing again on the tariffs and a lot on housing. And they're talking a lot about individual issues. They're talking about affordability, cutting the GST for first-time home buyers, and they're not really focusing on municipalities. And I would like them to focus more on that. And if you look at some of the issues that they're talking about on, let's say, on housing and what they propose to do, they are involving the municipalities without really having us at the table to talk about some of the issues or some of the challenges that we face with their proposals. And that's what I would like to see is that we are at the table with all the municipal, the federal and the provincial governments, the territories and First Nations. We have to work together if we're going to solve today's issues.
So let's pick up on the housing, because housing did play a major role in both debates. And when the word municipality is spoken, I hear my ears perk up. And that was the moment when the word municipalities was spoken in both debates. Mayor Salvati, during the French and English leaders debate, especially when it came to municipalities, housing was that hot topic. Liberal leader Mark Carney suggested that municipal bureaucracy is slowing down housing construction, and he wants to speed that process up. In your view, is the lack of new housing due to the municipal processes that go on behind the scenes, or was the Liberal leader kind of off base in his assessment of what the process that municipalities have to go through to build these houses?
Okay, I can understand why such a statement would be made, because if you look at the news lately, there are delays in some cities where the delays for permits go from 18 to 20 months. So, of course, your first reaction is, oh, it must be bureaucracy. But I think it's really important to understand what has to be done before a permit can be issued. Now, for us, it takes about 2 weeks to issue a simple permit. When everything is all set, we go. But you have to realize that in the last couple of years, the number of permits have been increasing significantly, and we need staff to process these permits. And staff has been really hard to come by. I mean, we've had the budgets for the staff, but we can't find them. Things have settled down a little, which is good. So that has nothing to do with the bureaucracy. It just has to do with we don't have the people to treat them. And as for there's rules and regulations that are in place, and they're there to protect the people, to protect the residents, to protect the environment, to make sure that any new buildings are in harmony with what's around. So you have to get the proper paperwork done prior to issuing this permit. You have to have the surveyor plans, to have the it's called the implantation, le plan d'implantation, and I'm trying to think of what that is. It's the plan, what the surveyor does to say where the building is, the plan. Then you have to have, maybe you need biological studies. You have to see what the impact is on the environment. If you have infrastructures for water treatment, well, you have to make sure that you have the capacity to accept all this new housing. And if you don't have those infrastructures, well, you have to make sure that the septic systems are up to par. So these are all things that have to be done prior to issuing a permit. And also make sure, are you too close to your neighbor? Is it too big? Do you have too many stories? So, a lot of the problems or the reason for delays in our municipality is because the people who are wanting to build do not have all the documentation. And to get surveyors to do their jobs, it takes months in order to get them to do the work. So it's not necessarily the municipalities that are delaying. I can't speak for other cities and municipalities where the delays are longer, but I know that in our municipality, these are the problems we've encountered. We've now been able to hire staff in order to process the permits more quickly, but a lot of the times the people who want to build are either not providing a plan that goes with the regulations that are in place right now, or they just don't have the proper work done prior to being able to issue the permits.
Councillor Santos, in both leaders' debates, Pierre Poilievre, Conservative leader, spoke about incentivizing those municipalities to speed up the development permits. Do you agree, or what is your opinion on the idea that municipalities are the key factors of delaying housing construction? And if not, and I'm gonna preface this before you even answer, because I'm pretty sure I know where you're gonna go with the answer. What's the real cause of the delays? Is it like Mayor Salvati said? Is it staffing shortages, or is there funding shortages? What is the real delay for municipalities trying to get these housing built, but they just can't right now?
Well, as one of the fastest growing municipalities in the country, I can share quite factually that City of Brampton is one of the fastest when it comes to cutting red tape and expediting applications through the process. And in fact, when I was first elected in 2018, I went through a process, expedited an application in 2019, and the shovels haven't hit the ground yet. We've got hundreds of applications that are ready to go, shovels in the ground, and we're waiting for the developers to do that. So to your point, Chris, I think that part of the challenge is not on the backs of municipalities, but just generally the market. The market has really kind of sucked lately with high interest rates. And, just a few years ago, when the developers in 2019 wanted me to expedite their application, we did that, but they didn't put shovels in the ground because no one's buying. Everyone kind of stopped by. Meanwhile, the population in Brampton continued growing. So we saw the provincial government and the federal government incentivize the building of additional residential units in single detached homes, which was another problem for us in Brampton, where we started seeing illegal basement apartments and illegal secondary unsafe units being developed because, developers weren't necessarily building the housing that they had applied for and were approved for. The other interesting piece, and Donna and Neil had brought it up as well, is related to cost. So we are restricted. We can't just approve applications and not have the wastewater capacity to service an additional 1,000 units when, 40, 50 years ago, the water system could only accommodate 100 units. So these are some of the major costs that are in the way and barriers in the way for municipalities as well. And then when you look at the provincial government, we can't just build all this housing without schools. And it's the provincial government and the school boards who are responsible for making sure that we have enough schools so that children and our young people are not stuck in portables. And then the only final piece that I'll add in this is municipalities, we all want to build complete communities, not just housing. We want to make sure we have the libraries, the community centers, the parks, and the green spaces in order to uphold a good quality of life for all Canadians, the same quality of life that we had growing up. And so when municipalities look at these applications, it's not just about squeezing units into a small space like sardines. We do take a more thoughtful approach. And so those, I think, one final thing, and I'm going to pass it over to Neil to talk about this one too, are the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard folks who we are required to have public statutory meetings. And the minute that we talk about townhouses or density in an area that they currently live in, the response is very usually, sure, I support more housing, but not next to my area. And so these are some of the challenges that we face as municipalities.
Councillor Como, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in 2023, the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, came out with a report saying that on average, it costs about $107,000 for municipalities to build one house, and that is the infrastructure that goes to that house. And while these federal leaders' debates truly tend to focus on the urban centers, housing challenges are also as real in rural communities as well. As the chair of the FCM Rural Forum, did you hear anything during the debates or since the campaign has started that suggests the federal leaders want to work closely with the rural municipalities? Because it seems that we talk about Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, but I'm assuming no one's talking about Torquay, Saskatchewan. I'm just trying to think of another small community in Northern Ontario, but I can't. But Gore, Quebec. Do you get a sense that rural municipal issues around housing are being taken serious, or is it just let's focus on the urban centers right now?
I would say for sure you hit the nail on the head, Chris. It's more focused on the urban centers. I mean, if we talk about, and in the past they've talked about tying funding to population and density, well, rurally density doesn't work, and if that's the case, then we're going to lose in that situation. I'm going to go back to what's close to me, and I sit on a wastewater commission. We're 13-member municipalities around here, and we just had to do a $195 million expansion to allow for wastewater to basically flow, let's call it what it is, in this area. And that's on the backs of the member municipalities. We did receive some funding from the province, but not from the federal government. So when we talk about, the immigration that's occurring in Canada, the number of people that are coming to every one of our provinces or our municipalities, how do we support them? Well, we need proper infrastructure. We're doing that. And as Rowena said, the NIMBYism, yeah, that's a real thing, even rurally, where people want things to stay rural and don't really want to accept change. And whether we like it or not, change is going to happen. It's got to be done in the right way, as Rowena said. Build the proper communities. But rurally, if it's tied to population and density, we're just looking in from the outside. And I haven't seen anything from any of the parties that makes me believe that isn't going to be the case. But that is something we need to continue to fight for. From FCM's perspective and rurally, we need to continue to showcase the importance of rural and that housing is different in a rural setting compared to an urban setting. And you mentioned a couple of those locations; those are old FCM friends of ours, but it is across the country. It could be in Nova Scotia. It doesn't matter. Rural population, a small increase is very incremental for us, but it probably isn't going to tip the scale as far as funding is concerned, unfortunately.
I want to just pose this question then, and if anyone wants to take it, they can. What does FCM want from the next federal government around housing? Who wants to take that question quickly in like 30 seconds or less, if possible? What's the FCM looking for? Anyone? Going once?
Affordable housing, and dealing with homelessness, chronic homelessness across the country, whether you're rural or whether you're in Donna's community in Quebec or in Brampton. It's a real thing that we're facing. So, building more affordable housing is super important, but also in the meantime, some sort of crisis emergency response when it comes to mental health addictions and homelessness.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Mayor, if you want to just follow up on that quickly before I ask you the follow-up question.
I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Councillor Como had mentioned. Part of our problem as municipalities is our sources of revenue. And, the whole financial framework hasn't changed in 100 years, and it's just not suited to today's needs. I'll give you an example. Affordable housing is something that we all want. We want people to be able to get their houses. But for a municipality whose revenue are like our revenue is 85% residential taxes. So if we have a house that's worth $3 million or $2 million versus, and 4 people live in that house versus a house that's $400,000 or $500,000, well, our costs are the same. Our costs are the same for infrastructure. They're the same for the library, for all the services we offer, but the revenues are not the same because we're only, so it's very difficult for municipalities with the framework, with the financial framework that we have now that is antiquated to really survive. And I want to just remind everybody that municipalities have to balance their budgets. So every time a federal leader says we're going to cut, the development costs, well, that means, right away I'm going, okay, what's going to be the impact on my municipality? Because right away, if I have less revenue, boom, I have to charge more on my taxes to make ends meet. They want to cut the GST. I think it's a great initiative for individuals. But does that mean that less revenue coming into the federal government means less grants for us to pay for our new water tank, fresh water reservoir that we need? And these are all things that are going through my mind, is the whole connection, which is why it's so important that we work together and that municipalities are at the table. Because at the end of the day, the money is coming out of the Canadians' pockets, and whether it's in income taxes or municipal taxes, it's still coming out of their pockets. And that's why we have to work together.
I want to just throw it over to Councillor Santos for a second for this next question. Your mayor, Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown, has been a national voice on public safety, especially regarding car thefts. Based on what you heard, and it was more prominent in the English debate than the French debate, do you feel that any of the party leaders are taking these concerns that your mayor, and I should say other mayors as well, but he is the prominent voice right now, taking their concerns about community safety seriously? Or is there any signs that you're hearing or seeing from the parties that would show some meaningful support for municipalities around to keep their community safe?
Yeah, safety continues to be a top concern for Canadians. I think the sentiment from all leaders is that they want to make those important adjustments to bail reform. We have an issue where in Brampton, somebody was released 53 times. 53 times. It is so demoralizing for police when they arrest someone and then the next day they're stealing cars again in the same neighborhood. Like, and so that is one important thing that I think whomever, and it's unfortunate that the Liberal government in their tenureship at the time didn't make those changes at the time. But I'm happy that all four of them, or the all leaders, are talking about making adjustments to bail reform. The other important piece in what they've been talking about is tightening up the border and dealing with guns and gangs and drugs. You know, whether or not that is prompted by Donald Trump, I don't think it is, but certainly tightening up things at the border and making sure the guns and the drugs don't come across over to Canada is also important as well. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how they're going to deal with organized crime across the entire country. We're seeing a lot of activity right now in the GTHA as it deals with organized crime and tow trucks in particular. That's a new thing that's happening recently. And then the final piece, getting back to, you know, what Donna was also sharing, is financing and funding for a lot of our growing communities when it comes to policing, whether that's through increased officers in RCMP or boots on the ground and funding to support gun and gang violence and intimate partner violence, domestic violence in our communities. We need that extra support as well when it comes to safety. One final piece that Mayor Brown likes to talk about, which Brampton is advocating to the federal government for, is amending the actual sentencing and punishment related to property theft. So if you're going to violently steal a car or do a break and enter or do massive retail property theft at a local small business, the sentencing and the charges related to that should be far stricter than what they are right now.
Councillor Como, picking up on what Councillor Santos just said, organizations like the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, the Rural Municipalities of Alberta and others, and I say that just because I deal with them a little bit more often than most of the other municipal organizations, are sounding the alarm about bail reform and repeat offenders. Rural Canada, and I say this because we see reports out of Manitoba over the last few weeks where armed men broke into a farm and stole things, literally armed with guns. And this is concerning to a lot of rural municipalities. When you hear the leaders talk about bail reform and changes to criminal codes, are you getting a sense that they're actually taking it seriously, or is it lip service right now?
I actually do think they're taking it seriously right now. It's a problem across Canada. I'll give you a specific example, Chris. A neighbor of mine literally had their house broken into 3 times. When they finally went to court, the lady that stole the jewelry from their house wore it to court, and my neighbor said, "Hey, that's my jewelry she's wearing." Nope. Sorry, doesn't matter. She picked it out. She knew the jewelry. The thief wore the jewelry to the court case, and nothing was done. So changes need to happen. I mean, that's across the board. And when you talk about, you know, I'm going to talk rural Alberta right now. There are people that unfortunately want to do things that they shouldn't be doing, and they're starting to think about this vigilante justice system. That doesn't work either, because somebody's going to get hurt. That can't happen. So what we need to do, there has to be evidence-based changes made to this system. And I do think they're taking that seriously, because it is across the border. As Rowena mentioned, you know, you want to talk about crime and border security. Yeah, those are things that need to happen, but we need to get our own borders figured out at home as well. And that is something that has to happen, because across rural Canada, specifically, I'm just going to say that there's too much of this. You know, no one, you know, on my farm, I don't keep overhead fuel here anymore, because it'd go missing. People would steal it. I'm not supplying it anymore. So you just don't do that. And people are changing their practices just to combat it on their own. But it needs to be combated. Get back to what it needs to be is reforms need to be in the justice system. It has to happen. And it's, you know, you can hire more boots on the ground, because most of our municipalities around here are doing that to try and make a change. But it needs to change in the courts. When Rowena said 53 times somebody's been released, that's appalling.
Just following up with you, Councillor Como, what has FCM done to make sure that party leaders understand that this needs to change? because we hear about 53, we hear about yourself, we hear about someone walking like someone in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, getting hit by a drunk driver who was out on parole, I think for the sixth time in their community, and the woman unfortunately succumbed to the collision. And this needs to be changed. What is FCM doing to make sure that this conversation that we're having right now doesn't end on April 29th when the next government is elected?
I think more than anything, Chris, when we are having our meetings and we meet with the parties, these are examples we're bringing up to them to show them the severity of what's happening in our communities. Because unfortunately, what they don't know. I mean, obviously, the one you're talking about, yes, they know. But these simple little examples in our communities of, as Rowena said 53 times, or myself, the resident, someone wearing their jewelry in the court case, if leaders know this, it's going to help them and have more ammunition to combat what's going on and make those changes. So I think as FCM, we just need to be the voice, and we need to be the voice of our residents and of our communities.
Mayor Salvati, trade issues between Canada and the United States came up in both debates last night and the night before. And municipalities alongside FCM has taken steps to build cross-border relationships, especially with American and Mexican counterparts. What concrete commitments or messages are you, and I say you as the mayor of your community, or even as FCM as a whole, looking for from party leaders to confirm that municipalities have a role to play in these trade discussions that are ongoing and they don't just get left to the side as they feel like they have over the last few years?
Unfortunately, I haven't heard a lot about the municipal involvement in terms of what the party leaders see as our municipal involvement. We have been involved. FCM has been very proactive. But, once again, I'm going to bring back the same thing. We have to work together. Municipalities have to be at the table. And for everything, for all the issues, the key is working together. We are the people with the boots on the ground. We know what's going on, and we just have to be at the table.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had to jump in on this one because I've been involved with this. We have to continue to build those relationships. I know in the last, I'm going to say month and a half, I've been down to the States 3 times on different junkets, and municipal leaders understand it. But what we need to do is help them and give them more information that they can go back home to provide up information to their senators, to their representatives above them. It has been and it is a Team Canada approach because, as the premiers have been down to the States to talk about tariffs. Municipalities like mine have been down to talk about the tariffs, and it will continue. And it is continuing. Just to give you a little heads up, some of the NACO members that we met with down in DC in March, I believe it was, they're coming to our convention in Ottawa. So they're going to sit on some panels. This is what we need to do. We need to continue that and build upon that relationship. And we need to hear their perspective as well. We need to continue those relationships, Chris. And that is happening. And FCM is putting their foot forward and doing that and better establishing those relationships as Donna was talking about.
And I'll just add that there's no other level of government on either side of the border that understands that when a plant shuts down or slows down in their local economy, it's the local economy, the mayors, the councillors, the local workers who feel it the most. The town of Alliston, when there was a rumor of Honda potentially moving to the United States, everyone was freaking out. The mayor was freaking out. The councillors were freaking out. We feel it first. And so FCM's approach to take a city-to-city approach, even though there's, questions around Trump and how he's dealing with things depending on how he wakes up in the morning, there is stability in local government because we have relationships with mayors and councillors across the border who get it as much as we do. And that level of understanding is unique to local governments, to mayors and councillors. So, FCM's approach, our approach to take a city-to-city approach, build and strengthen those local relationships, provide stability, quite frankly, for the businesses as well.
Following up with you, Councillor Santos, if you don't mind, you and a fellow Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, because I've got to make sure I throw Hamilton in there now because that's what it's officially called, the GTHA councillor, recently launched a Buy Canadian, which, if, for those who are not watching this, you have your banner behind you, which is Stand for Canada campaign at the municipal level. Was there anything in either leaders' debates or since this campaign launched that gives you hope that federal leaders will support municipalities like Brampton and your fellow GTAH councillors in prioritizing Canadian products over international and specifically, and I hate to say this, but specifically American products?
Hmm. Yeah, so it was refreshing to hear at the leaders' debate, them very patriotically, all of them supporting local, encouraging folks to support Canadian-made products, but even more nuanced. The leaders were talking about, you might be an American business based here in Canada, but as long as you're producing and have jobs here in Canada, particularly the auto sector, for example, you will not be punished with tariffs from Canada. So I think folks are now taking a more thoughtful approach in order to better protect Canadian jobs, Canadian-made goods, irrespective of what tariffs might be happening in the United States. That is very, very reassuring. I'll share an example. Just before this interview today, I went to go visit a small business who has a Pakistani grocery store in the ward that I represent. And he shared with me how, speaking about safety, his store experiences theft in the amount of $800 a week. A small little shop in Brampton. And one thing that we could do to support a lot of these small businesses who are being challenged is support local. Instead of going to a big chain grocery store in Brampton, I'm now going to go to this little small chain here, the Pakistani grocery store, because they're experiencing theft of $800 a week, a family-run business. So support local 100%. I'm happy that all the leaders get it. That's for sure.
Mayor Salvati?
I just wanted to add that in my area, the mayors around, we're all changing our purchasing habits at the municipal level, and I think that can be nothing but beneficial for all of us. And as soon as we installed these rules a couple of months ago, when things were starting to get a little bit iffy, and we have local, regional, provincial, and Canadian, and that's where it stops. And we're very, very careful about where we are purchasing our goods and services now, which I think is something that has spread across the country.
Councillor Como, as the Western voice on the roundtable discussion, you heard from all party leaders about energy policies in both French and English, and they were discussed extensively in both debates. I'm kind of throwing a softball, but I'm going to throw a softball, then a fastball, if you don't mind. How do rural municipalities and municipalities across Canada view the energy sector in Canada? And then to follow up with that, and this is the fastball, is FCM working with municipalities and the federal government to address and balance promoting energy with protecting the rural economies and the environment?
I'll hit the fastball first. Absolutely, they are. FCM has shown support in the past for corridor work and pipelines, and that hasn't stopped. That is still there. That is something that the Poilievre government spoke about. And FCM, yes, we support pipelines. We support corridors. From a rural perspective, 100%, especially in Alberta, we are the lifeline. That's the lifeline of Alberta is oil and gas, energy sector, as well as agriculture. And both of those are being impacted right now by the tariffs, but we still have to show the importance of it. I think what we have to think about as well is the importance of the breaking down the interprovincial barriers, and those need to happen. We need to be able to get from coast to coast to coast because, this situation with the United States could carry on for the next 4 years. I sure hope it doesn't, but it could. And if we can break down some of those barriers and get hydro from Quebec coming out west, that's a good thing. If we can get oil and gas going to the Gulf Coast, that's a good thing. Donna, you're ready to jump in on this one, I see. But we have to break down those barriers and really work on breaking down the interprovincial barriers. Energy is vastly important for rural Canada, all of Canada for that matter. When you think about where the energy needs to go and where markets it could open up to into the Asian markets, etc., we need to look at those, or European markets for that matter. I think we have to explore all opportunities right now to create a better Canada. And right now we're struggling, but I think there is a bright future ahead of us. If we always have to look at what the positives of a situation are. If we just dwell on the negatives right now of the tariffs and what's going on south of the border, we're not going to get anywhere. We got to look at the positives and how we can pivot from this. And if there's one thing Canada's good at, it is pivoting. We're good at building relationships and pivoting, and I think we can do that moving forward. And I'll turn it over to you, Donna.
Before I throw it to Donna, I just have this picture in my head of Neil trying to push a couch up a stairwell like Ross did on Friends. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Anyway, Mayor Salvati, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, we're very preoccupied with the tariffs and becoming more independent in terms of our economy. And we're counting down the days till the Trump administration is over. And I think that we have to look even more long term, because we have no guarantees who's going to be in power the next 3 and some years. The changes that are happening now does not mean that when there's a new administration, things will be significantly different. We have no guarantee. So I think that we have to make decisions for the long term in order to make sure that we are not as dependent on the U.S. economy.
Councillor Santos?
Yeah, the one thing that I'll add is as we are strengthening our local economy and breaking down provincial barriers to trade and supporting local in Canada, we also have to recognize that the United States is not our only ally, or wasn't our only ally. There are so many allies around the world who are feeling Canada right now. I've had people reach out from Germany. I was recently at Canon headquarters in Brampton from the Japanese company, who then the president of Canon Canada said, now is the time to strengthen our relationship with Canada. We want to support you because of what's happening in the United States. So there's huge opportunity to expand our markets for our businesses. And I think one of the ways that the federal government can do that is start to provide grant funding or some sort of subsidized support so local businesses in Canada can ship to other places around the world more easily.
Councillor Como, last word to you, because I'm cautious of time and I have 2 things I need to ask before we wrap up. But last word to you. Didn't think the energy topic would be that fruitful, but here we are. Go ahead, Councillor.
Well, thank you. All I wanted to add is just that, this is not a short-term play. This is a long-term play that we have to look at, and we have to be cognizant of that. I mean, when I was at NACO and Matt Chase, the head of NACO, said to me, realized that there were issues with the Biden administration that weren't being dealt with. There's going to be issues with the Trump administration, and bang on, it's going to be the next administration after that. So these are relationships that we have to look at it from a long play. It can't be just that short term, the house is on fire, run out of it. No, we got to figure out why it's on fire. So that's all I wanted to add, and I'll let you get on, Chris.
I want to just turn to my last topic before we start wrapping up here. And it was mentioned in the French debate, but it was also mentioned quickly in the English debate as well. And that is around jurisdictional issues, the provincial issues, the municipal issues, and the federal issues. Now, I've done about, I'm going to just hypothetically say, about 350 to 400 municipal interviews from across Canada over the last few years. And it is a topic that I hear about all the time. Municipalities feel like they're getting downloaded upon. They feel like they're not being heard. They're not being at the table. Mayor Salvati, after this election is said and done, because promises are going to be made, things are going to be said, does FCM want to push for a stronger partnership with other levels of government to ensure that municipalities have a strong, reliable voice at the table when discussing not only municipal issues, but federal issues and provincial issues as well?
Absolutely. I think that's the key to moving forward as a country is to be working together. And we have the National Prosperity Partnership that we would like to have the federal government embrace. And I already spoke about the financial aspects, how antiquated our financial framework is, and all of the issues that we have to deal with. It has to be done together. So yes, the FCM is pushing for collaboration. And I heard a little bit about collaboration in the English debate yesterday. And I was really quite pleased to hear about that because I think that's the best way moving forward is with collaboration and to look to review the whole system with municipalities because we are an engine for prosperity in Canada.
Councillor Santos, following up on that a little bit. Now we are 2 weeks into this. The two debates are over. We are just a week away from Canadians voting. If not, if they're already voting in advance voting, which voting has already opened for those who are watching it over the Easter long weekend, it has already opened. But on April 28th, voting will be taking place. We talked about a lot of macro issues here on the show in the last 45 minutes, but what key issues still have not been addressed by party leaders from a municipal perspective? And I want all three of you to answer that question, if you don't mind, starting with Councillor Santos, that you hope they address in the last 7 days.
Yeah, and Donna was alluding to it, and what I wanted to get into. We are now in the final stretch of this campaign, and even in the debate, not one of the leaders actually talked about working together and establishing a stronger relationship and partnership with municipalities. Not one. They framed municipalities by passing blame on municipalities as to why housing wasn't being developed, but failed to acknowledge the incredible work we do servicing and serving the same residents that they're asking for votes. And we need them to talk about a national prosperity partnership. We need them to elevate the conversation and recognize that local municipalities, local communities are really the engines of growth in our country. And we need that new framework in place. So I'm hoping that someone is going to bring it up in this last week. I'm hoping there's going to be an announcement of some sort where there's a bunch of mayors and councilors in the background in a community. That I really want folks to hear that, because I'm certainly sharing with my residents when they say to me, why are my property taxes so high? Why do you keep increasing my property taxes? I throw it back at them and start talking about all the income taxes that's deducted from their paycheck that municipalities don't have access to unless we beg and plead every single election.
Councillor Como, what happens at this election? And I'll throw it over to Mayor Salvati here in 2 seconds. But Councillor Como, what happens in this election is important, but what also happens after this election is as important. Following up with what Councillor Santos said, how do we ensure that we hold these federal leaders and these federal parties to account of what they said and promised during this campaign? And what are you hoping to hear over the next few days as we head into April 28th to ensure that municipal issues are on the forefront as Canadians head to the polls?
What we have to do is we hit it boots on the ground right off the hop. Again, Mr. Carney, Mr. Poilievre have not met with FCM yet. That's the first thing that has to happen. If we can get them at the convention is what I would hope. And we need to continue to build those relationships. That there's going to be some new members that don't know what FCM is. We need to educate them. We have to do that. That is very important. And educate them on, as what Rowena talked about, the lack of funding for infrastructure, whatever it may be, our projects in our communities, that a lot of us are struggling financially. There's a lot of municipalities that are really struggling financially, and they have to understand that, because with a strong communities around them, if they can support them in the right way, then we have a strong Canada. And right now, I think there's a lot of Canada that feels neglected. There have been some downloads that have occurred. We can talk about the RCMP funding, whatever we want to talk about, but there's been some downloads that have occurred. that we've had to pivot, we've had to adjust. And as Donna said, we always have to balance our budget. We have to prepare for the future with reserves. We don't always have a big bank full of cash that can support this. And ultimately, they all know it. There's one tax dollar and it gets spread across the way. We just seem to be getting the smallest portion, unfortunately, right now. And we need to figure that out with a better framework in how funding comes to municipalities. That's the biggest thing, is if we can portray to them that the funding structure currently, as Donna said, is antiquated. It needs to be restructured. It needs to be rejigged. And there's many different people out there with different ideas. We just need to find one that moves forward, that is better for all communities. And, with that, then you talk about affordability. And what are Canadians struggling with right now? Just affordability in general. That doesn't just mean housing. It's affording groceries. It's affording the utilities, everything. We need to make a stronger, more resilient Canada.
Mayor Salvati. Sorry, tongue tied here. Before you ask, I just have to add a little bit onto this question that I want to pose to you as well. Because while we've been talking about what's happening federally, and we're talking about that one national campaign where the leaders are crisscrossing, we also have to remember that this is not just a national campaign. It's also local campaigns as well. It's 343 local campaigns happening across Canada as we're talking. Local candidates are door knocking. Local candidates should be meeting with their municipalities. What are you hoping for, to add on to what Councillor Como and Councillor Santos said? What are you hoping to hear from party leaders? And I'm just going to add here locally, what are you hoping to hear from local candidates that would give you a sense that municipal issues are being taken seriously, both at the local level and at the national campaign as well?
Well, what I'm finding, and I mentioned it before, a lot of the candidates are focusing on the issues that affect directly the individuals in their constituency. So, they're talking about all sorts of, the increasing the amount for the RIFs, extending the benefits for the old age pension, etc. But they're not talking about municipalities. And it's very difficult. I mean, we are one person. We do represent our communities, but they're going door to door to get all those votes. And sometimes I feel that just by the numbers, they're not coming to us, because how many votes are they going to get when somebody says we need reliable infrastructure funding? When Rowena talked about it, she said, we have to pray to get, hoping to get funding, which is not always up to the amount that we're hoping to get. And it causes a great stress on our finances. So we need funding that comes in regularly, that's dependable, that we know we can plan for our future, for what we need to have done. So, it's really a numbers game, and they're really focusing on individual issues that are, from people who are going to be voting. So we just have to keep reminding them and keep pounding and reminding them of our message, that we are where it all starts, and we have to be heard, and we have to just keep on talking to them.
Final 30-second question to all three of you, and then I'll let you guys go, because you guys have been here for an hour and I appreciate your time. But what's the one message that each and every single one of you want to leave the viewers, the listeners, the people who are watching this, downloading this, about what has transpired in this election, and why it is important to think about the municipal perspective when they head into that ballot box to vote? We'll start with Mayor Salvati on this one.
Well, I think that we have to work together. All levels of government have to work together to try to solve the problems that we have. So as people are entering to the ballot box, they have to think about who is the person that will be able to bring all of these levels of government together so that we can work together. And I live in a mountainous area, and I have to go up a hill, and I have to make sure I have 4-wheel drive and good tires and a proper driver to get up that hill in the winter. And, it's a little bit like that. Unless all 4 tires are working together, I'm not going to get up the hill. So the federal, the provincial, the territories, the First Nations, individual Canadians, municipalities, we all have to work together to get up that hill. And that is the message that I think is so important.
Councillor Santos.
Yeah, Canadians, residents, the residents that we proudly serve are tired of all orders of government passing the hot potato and saying, oh, no, that's municipal, oh, no, that's federal, no, that's provincial. And imagine what our country would be like if we addressed every single problem with a Team Canada approach. Instead of passing the hot potato, imagine if the federal government said to towns and cities, hey, how can we be more supportive of you so that you can help us build more housing? Or to the provincial government when it comes to, safety in Ontario and policing in Ontario. It would be amazing to take that Team Canada approach. And I think residents are tired when politicians come at their doorstep and pass the hot potato and say, oh, well, that's a municipal issue. That's not me. So I think Donna's right that we want to take that Team Canada approach, not just with US and Canada relations and tariffs, but for every single issue. And finally, I think that, in this election, I would really love for all leaders to finally give more respect to municipal government.
And final word over to you, Councillor Como, to end this roundtable. So you better knock it out of the park because I'm using references today that I have not been using on this show. So hit it out of the park. What's your final message to viewers and listeners?
Well, I'm going to go back to Scott Pierce. We're the government of proximity, right? And we know that. And we are the knowledge keepers of what the community needs and what they're experiencing. So if we can portray that across to our federal leaders of tomorrow, whoever they're going to be, and the Team Canada approach, bang on correct, we need to look at that because Canada needs to go back. I'm going to hit rewind. I'm going to do some history. Coming out of Second World War, we were a superpower. We need to go back to that. We need to create that identity again. And we've gone from saying sorry too many times to we need to be bullish and we need to move things forward. And that is opening up other lines of trade, becoming more self-reliant, because unfortunately we've tied ourselves to a ship that we know we're still going to be tied to. But if they're not going to treat us properly, we need to find some new friends. And that's what we need to do. I think when everyone's going to vote, you have to figure out what's right for your community, but not just community. It's right for Canada and move Canada forward in the right way.
Mayor Salvati, Councillor Santos, Councillor Como, you've all knocked it out of the park. Bases are loaded. Municipalities are looking for the person to hit that home run. And I think with you three at FCM, it is going to be impressive to not have a federal leader who is going to want to talk to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities with you guys there. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. To the Canadians who are watching this and viewing this and downloading and listening to this, get out and vote. This is an important election. This is an important time in our democracy. This is an important time in our country. I will never tell you who to vote for, but be sure to go to the ballot boxes and cast your vote. Do not complain if you do not vote. And at the end of the day, your party doesn't win. So get out and vote. From the bottom of my heart, all three of you, thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you so much for being here. Greatly appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to head over to our social media pages and follow us there. And if you can, head over to any of your favorite podcast platforms and subscribe to the show, or subscribe to the show on YouTube at Cross Border Networks. Now, to learn more about the communities in the Peach Bowl that we feature on this show and our sister shows, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Your support means the world to us. So share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going heading into the April 28th election day. We want to thank everyone for tuning in for another great episode. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs later on next week. Till then, everyone.